Hi guys, in this video we're gonna start learning hooks. So basically hooks is a function that lets you use React's feature without using classes. So you don't have to use class. Actually you cannot use hooks inside class. So yeah. So it's for using hooks you can use inside only a functional component. Now we're gonna see there are many types of hooks. Also you can create hooks on your own, and we're gonna see these things in our lecture video. So first of all, the restriction that we got, that you cannot use hooks inside a class. Now what these hooks provides, like what this reacts hooks provide. Now react hooks provide you with the state react, like you can use hooks for using the state. You can use hooks for the props, lifecycle methods. So these all are we're gonna cover in our lecture video. So in this first video of our hooks, we're gonna see the hooks that is use state. How can we use this use state for hooking to the React state? Now back to my code. Now in here I haven't created anything. So I have just created a folder called components. So inside this component folder, I'm going to create a new file such that we're gonna see, or I'm going to demonstrate this use state hooks. Now again, I'm going to create a file that is counter.js. Now in our counter.js, first of all, I'm just going to use import React from React. Now from here on, I'm not going to create any class component because we are in a level that we can create only a functional component and we can write the code. Now in our counter functional component, we are going to write, or we're going to return the JSX code in here. So first I'm going to use a div, and again closing div, again a div, and again a closing div. Now inside the closing div, I'm going to create a new h1 tag, and again I'm going to close it. Now inside this increase by one, I'm just going to write a text called increase by one, such that whenever you click on this button, you will see the amount to be increased or the number to be increased. Now what we need in here, I'm just going to import it, right? So for importing here, I'm just going to use this export default or default. What's happening? Yeah, export default counter. Now in here, I'm just going to import it in our app.js. In here, I'm just going to use counter. Yeah, uh, we haven't imported it. Okay, we have imported it, right? Now in here, I'm just going to give some styling in here. Oh, we don't need it, right? Yeah, we don't need it, any styling in here. So just I'm going to demonstrate, right? So just go to your counter.js. Now in here, what we need, we're gonna use this use state hook, and as the name suggests, use state is a hook that is given by React. So basically any hook that is started by use is a hook. Okay, so inside this use state, you're gonna provide the initial value. Now this initial value in here, first of all, I'm just going to give any primitive value that you wanna give, like any number, string. Yeah, number and string. And in the later video, we're gonna see that you can also provide an object, but we're gonna see in the next video. Okay, so in here, what does this mean now? If I just console it, just consoling it here, console.log array, I'm just going to save it and just open this console in here. Now inside this console, as you can see in here, that we got an array, right? So in first element we have the data, we have the initial value, or just call it data, right? And the second one is a function, that is a dispatch function, like as we have seen in our Redux, that it's gonna dispatch an action. So yeah, so I'm just going to destructure the data in here. So the first one is this count one. Or just given here a count. So just given here count. Now inside this count, mm, yeah. So inside this count, sorry, after that second element is a count, set count. Now this is a function, right? Now what we can do next is that for showing the data, what we can do in here, that we can use a string interpolation in here. So I'm just going to show the data in here, but just by using count one, count. Now what we can do for, like, whenever you click on here, it's gonna dispatch an action, right? So in here I'm just gonna use this on click, and you can just give an you can make your own function and just call it, or just I'm going to call it here just for simplicity. I'm just using a set count and count plus one. Now this is done, and if I just click on it, as you can see here that the count is increasing. So what happened that whenever you click on this set count will be uh, dispatch between the two renders, right? The initial render and the final render, such that we got this data. Now again there is part that, like, this is a one user state, this is a one state. Now what happens that when you want to create a new counter, right? Like you want to create a new counter for two, and so you cannot use the same thing right here. Like for this part you have to use count plus 2. Now if we just click it, you can see that the same thing happening in two places. We don't need this. So what we can do, we can create one more use state, right? So we can create a new use state in here and just give in a set count 2, and again use state 0 for here. Now in here you can just give a count 2 and here set count 2. Now in here if I just click on it here, you can see the same thing is not happening here, because as you can see that the code, okay, oh, this is wrong. You have to give it like this. Yeah, now it is correct. Now if we just increase, as you can see that this is not dependent on this two component is independent of each other. So whenever this component will re-render, what happens that it will go through the 4 and 5 line of code. Okay, the number 4 line of code and 5 line of code, not yeah. So it will go up to down, and it will re-render the page again and again. So this is how this use state works for any primitive values like number and string. Now we're gonna see in our next video how can we do the same thing for a form, like whenever you use and a first name and last name, how can we do that? So yeah, so stay tuned for the next video. That's all, thanks. Hi guys, so in this video we're gonna see how can we use object as a state inside useState. Now for that part we are going to create a new file in here. So inside our components I'm going to create a new file. Let's say its name is statehooks2.js. Now inside here what we're gonna create an import React from React, and now in here I'm just going to use state hooks 2. Sorry for the improper name. So now in here I'm going to return a JSX syntax. So in here I'm just going to export default this state hooks 2 function. Now in here I'm going to give a div. Now inside this div we need the input tag. So first of all we need the div tag again, and now in here I'm going to give an span giving first name slash span. Now also we need closing div inside here, and here I'm going to give an input tag if has an type text, and I'm going to give the name so that we can use this as a key inside handling the state. So in here I'm going to give f name, just going to close it. And the same thing we need for the last name also. I'm just going to copy it here and just remove the part in here, last name and l name. Now in here I'm just going to show the last div. I'm just gonna show the content inside this whole input tag. Now in our app.js what I'm going to do is just comment out and just import this state hooks to.js. Now we have imported this state hooks. We got this first name and last name. Now yeah, let's see how can we use this use state in here. So in here what we need again, I'm just going to give full name in here, is a state in here, and we're gonna set the name, right? So setting the name is a function, and in our user state we're gonna provide an object that is fname lname. Now let's see what we got inside this full name, right? So just saving it here and just opening this console. Okay, yeah, so we got an object, right? We got an object, so we can get the value inside this full name, right? So I'm just going to extract this structure from here, the name that we now want, f name and l name, and use it here also. So full name. Now in here I'm just going to display it. So f name l name, so there is a space. So for much clarity I'm just going to give it like this. So we got this here. Okay, now what we need an onchange method. Now this will handle the method, right? And we're gonna create this handle change, our own method. Just going to copy it and paste in here. Okay, so we haven't created this handle change method, right? So I'm just going to create a new handle change method, and we need this event listener. in here, and just going to destructure again. The value that we got is name, that is the key, maybe f name or l name, and the value. Now from where we will get that is event.target. Now this is done. Now we're gonna dispatch the function. Now set name. Now in here, as you can see that you cannot use it like this, right? If you use it like this, what will happen that if you change something, it will like, yeah, let's see what happened when you do this. Now, yeah, so we got this undefined, right? We didn't get any data in lname. So what happens that whenever you use this part, this new object will be created in here, and this lname key will be removed from that object. So what we can do that we can use the previous object, that is the full name that we have initialized, and just replace the content inside the key that you want to replace. Now this is what we need. Now if I just maybe refresh it again. Yeah, so now let's see what happens. Okay, as you can see here that both key is working perfectly. So this is how you can handle an object when you're gonna use this use state. Now in our next video we're gonna see or learn the use effect hooks, and if you can search it and you can see what it is. So yeah, that's all. Thanks. Hi guys, so in this video we're gonna learn our second hook, that is use effect. And previously we have learned our first, that is the use state, that lets you hook to the React state. Now for exploring this use effect, I'm going to create a timer in here, and it's not a fancy timer, just a number that is being increased by one. So if you want to do anything else, you can just create your own formatter and just give the, yeah, give the value and it will format like this. So I'm not going to build it, so I'm just going to counter plus one. So yeah, so I'm just going to just create the first of all UI. So I'm just going to use it here. I'm going to give timer here and just closing it. Now just exporting this file. So I'm just going to export it, export default timer. Now using in here our app.js, I'm going to use timer in here. So yeah, that's it. That's what we need. We got this timer. Now what this use effect is, so in our class component we have lifecycle methods, right? Such as like the one that we have used for data fetching. Okay, so basically the one which we are gonna use whenever the page renders. So yeah, after the page renders, what are the lifecycle methods that we're gonna use? That is component did mount, component will update, or component will unmount. So combining these three all lifecycle method comes under, or combining all these three will do the same trick that the use effect will do. Okay, so we're gonna see these three lifecycle methods into one use effect into action in here, not in this video, but we're gonna see in next one video more maybe. So let's begin with our use effect. So basically what this is, that use effect will be called after this component will be mounted on this page. So basically the component did mount, right? So what, but this is also occur when component will update. Okay, whenever the some props will change, then this use effect will also work. So how can we restrict the action of use effect? We will see in the later video. So first of all, one thing that is use effect will run anytime, each time or every time whenever this effect, whenever any props will change. Okay, so in here what it need it need a effect, yeah, it need a function, callback function. So you can define a function in here. I'm going to give an arrow of a function such that I'm going to define in here as well. So what we need a set timeout, right? So inside this set timeout, if you don't know what this function does, just google it and you can see what it is. So what it does like, after, in here in the second argument, I'm just gonna give 1000, that is that this is a second, right? Sorry, this is millisecond. So 1000 millisecond is 1 second. So it will run this function, anything that you're gonna write in here in this function after 1 second. So yeah, so I'm just going to create a new state. Okay, so inside this state I'm going to use to update the value of the set second, right? So this means that whenever you update the set second, this use effect will run again, right? That's what I have said, that it will run for both component date mount and component will update. Now I'm just going to use state in here, just giving the value, the initial value, that is 0. Now in here I'm just going to wrap this up in curly braces such that I'm going to use string interpolation in here and giving the second value. As I have said, you can use the formatter if you want. Okay, so it's done. I don't know why it is not showing. I'm just going to refresh it so it will be shown in. Yeah, we got this UI. Now what we can do next is I'm going to update the value, right? So set second plus 1. Okay, yeah, that's it. That's what we need. Okay, so is there, yeah. So as you can see in here that it will be updated each time because two things happening here. Whenever the first time there is page mounted, component did mount will happen. So the same thing use effect will happen. And now again, if it is changing, the value of second is changing, so this timer will again re-render. So again this will use effect will run after render, and this is component will update. So now this is not what we want, right? We want to stop it, we want to start it, that we have a functionality in our hand, right? So for that purpose I'm going to create a new state, that is start, such that it has a value of true or false that we're gonna need in here. And again we're gonna use state, and the first value, okay, the initial value is false. So in here we need a button, right? So inside this button I'm gonna give the text also by just using the ternary operator if else type of thing. So text button you can give in here. So if it is not started, okay, if it is not started, so the text will be start, or if it is started, so we need to stop it, right? So I'm just gonna give it here, give in here the text button also. Mm, yeah, text button. Now I'm going to give in here text button and also then horizontal line in here. Okay, so we got this, but we haven't used like, it doesn't do anything, right? So just giving the value in here on click. and changing the value whenever you click on it. But this thing is not uh, hook or attached with to this use effect, right? So let's see what we have to do next. So set start to be is start. Okay, like it will toggle the value, and you can see in here start, stop. Okay, it's not changing, right? Oh, sorry. Set start. Yeah, now if we can see in here, uh something is changing. Okay, just refresh it again. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, it's working fine. Yeah, so now we have to see how can we use this easy start in here. So as I have said in the previous video that there are restriction of using hooks, right? We can only use hooks inside a functional component at the top level. Okay, so we cannot use a hook inside a function, like rather than the component. Okay, we can use inside the if else block. So what we can do, that we can give the if else inside here. Okay, so if it is started, that time we gonna run this code. Okay, so as I'm going to give in here and refresh back in here, it is not started, it is false, so it is not started. If I just again start, so it is running in here, and if I just click on this stop, it will be stopped, and again we start, it will be started. And yeah, that's all. So this is how we can use this use effect. So we haven't talked about the things like data fetching. We will see in the next video. Yeah, so there is more to it. Let's say in the next video. That's all. Thanks. Hi guys. So in this video, we're gonna fetch some data from an API, and we're gonna see how can we do that in our use effect hook. So let's begin with that. I'm going to use import React from React, and using the const because we're gonna use the functional component in here. So I'm just going to wrapping up with this functional component as a return. And in here, I'm not going to give anything right now, just a div, and just exporting it, export default, fetch to do, and just importing into our app.js. For that, we're gonna just use fetch to do in here. Now just saving it, it will give nothing right now. So let's begin with our use effect, because as I have said, use effect is used for the lifecycle methods of React, such as component mount, component will update, or component will unmount. So let's fetch our data from an API, and the API is this, and we're gonna use this a promise that we got from this fetch. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna get a response, and this response we are going to change or convert into JSON, and then we will get some data, right? So we're gonna store in our state, and the state name is data, or just given the to do will be good. And now just set to do, and again using the useState hook, and for now just give it null. Now we will get data, right? And such that we're gonna use is set to do such that we can set the data into our React fetch to do functional component. And in here it's an object, right? So we're gonna just spread out the data in here, and but by doing this we will get the to do, right? Now if we just go to our React dev tools and okay, just a sec. Yeah, so we have get this fetch to do in here, and as you can see in here, just look into our state in here that we got this to do, right? So we're gonna just get this title, right? So in here I'm just gonna do to do title. Okay, so just checking in here, we got this. And what this is, that what that I have done is an optional chaining, that is for checking for null is operator. I'm going to give one video on this, maybe in some other videos, but this is a proper way of checking for any null values. And if there is no null values, it will just give the text in here that you can see in here. Now if we just now if we just go to if we just console in here, you will see a bizarre thing in here. So just going in here, okay, and as you can see in our console, that you can see that we are getting object again and again. Why we are getting this? Because right now this use effect is doing same as component did update, not as a component did mount. So we have to restrict this thing, right? Because as you can see in here that we got a bunch of responses again and again. So for restricting it, we have another params that we can pass after this. And for right now, for stopping this, I'm just going to give an empty array. And so what do I mean by this? Okay, so what is this empty array, right? So basically, in a layman term, if you don't know anything, okay, so if you just give an empty an array in here, this use effect will run as a component mount. Okay, so it will run as a component mount. Now what is the significance of this second param is that, first of all, this will be an array, right? This will be an array, and whatever the props or state you're gonna pass in here, okay, whatever the props and state that you're gonna pass in here is the dependency for running this effect. What do I mean by this? So for checking what I mean by that, I'm going to create one button here. So for that, I'm going to give a h1 tag in here and just closing it and creating a button in here and giving unmount. Okay, so actually this is a very significant part that I'm going to tell it right now. So in here I'm just going to create a new const and the name is unmount. It's not a big deal right now. So is unmount set unmount is use state. First of all, it will be a false. Okay, and now what I can do is that, and whenever I click on it, it will change the set unmount and it will just toggle it out. Okay, so it's all only going to toggle it out. Now what we can do next is, as you can see in here, if we just gonna pass in here is unmount. Okay, now just saying it. Okay, so you have got this value, right? You have got this to do, and if I just click on it again, you will see that this will again occur. This use effect will again fetch the data, and if I just click on again, it will fetch again. So you will not see, but what do I mean by this? That for a previous render and after render, it is checking the value of this is unmount. So right now, maybe it's false. Okay, when it's false, in here it will not render. But if I just click on this unmount, the value changes to true. And now what happens that the React will check for the items that is present in this array before render and after render and compare it. And if it is equal, it will not run this effect, or if it is not equal, it will run this effect. So that's what's happening in here. Okay, now there is one more thing that I'm going to tell, that is how can we uh, get functionality of component will unmount. So what this use effect does, that whenever you're gonna return something from use effect hook, it will be a function, and so you can name any function in here. I'm just gonna give an anonymous function, and if we just do this line of code, it will return this use effect after the component will unmount type of thing will happen in here. So how can you see this? So just set the to do in here to be null, and what I'm going to do, that I'm going to increase the fetching time to the 5 second, so it will fetch the data after 5 seconds, such that you can see what's happening in here. Okay, so in here I'm just gonna copy this and just paste in here. Okay, it will not look nice, but let's see what happens in here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, okay, so we didn't get the data. Yeah, we got the data. So as you can see in here we got the data after 5 seconds, right? We got the data. Now this return function has not been run. Why? Because we haven't changed anything in here. If we change our props, what will happen, that this whole component will unmount. Okay, so this line of code will run. Let's see what happens when I just click on this unmount. As you can see in here, that our set to do is to be null, and in here we got the data again after 5 seconds, and we got this data. And if I just click on it again, you will see that it will be removed because data is null, and again we will get the data after 5 seconds. So in this video we have talked about component didn't mount and component will unmount, and how can we write for component will unmount. Okay, as we have seen that we can create use state multiple times, also we can do the same thing for use effect also. You can create multiple use effect. Why? Because sometimes why it occurs that the same, because this line of code belongs to some part of the functionality, and we don't want to mix up with this some other type of functionality that we want to use. So the React hooks provides us to separate our code, separate our functionality so that it will not be mixed up with each other. So yeah, so this is the advantages of use effect hooks. We don't have to write the same code in different lifecycle methods. We don't have to write different functionality in the same uh, component lifecycle methods. We can separate out by using different use effect hooks. And yeah, so this is how we can end this video of our use effect. So in the next video we're gonna see a new hook. So let's see in the next video. Stay tuned. Hi guys, so far we have learned two hooks, that is use state and use effect. Now in this video we're gonna learn the third hook, that is use reducer. Now as the name suggests, use reducer. So basically we have learned this Redux part, right? And in the Redux we have seen this reducer part, right? And we're gonna see the same thing happening in this use reducer that is given by the React. Now let's begin with that. Now basically that we have learned this use state, and we are going to learn this use reducer. The both have the same work to store the state, but React give this use reducer as a way to solve some you can say solve some complex logic, and that's what we're gonna see. But you can use both if you want to. Okay, so let's begin with one practice example. We're gonna create this advanced counter, right? We have created this counter in our use state, and in here I'm just gonna create a advanced counter. So I'm just gonna export it in advanced counter name and just importing in here. Now will be imported in here. Now first of all we have to write some CSS code, right? So I'm just gonna create this div. Okay, and inside this div I'm gonna give one div, and in here I'm just gonna create h2 tag. Inside this curly braces we're gonna write some JavaScript code, JavaScript expression, and basically we're gonna use this string interpolation, right? Now in here dollar sign we're gonna provide something, but we don't need right now. We're gonna provide the state, right? So we have written this. Now in here what we need, I'm just gonna close this div. Now we will get this counter, right? Now in here what we're gonna do, we're gonna create three buttons in here. First button will be a increment button, such that the symbol is plus, and the second one is for minus, such that we will decrement by one or any number that you want to, and the second one is for reset this whole counter. Now yeah, it's happening. Yeah, now in here we're gonna use this new reducer, right? Now the new reducer that I have said, sorry, new hook that is use reducer. So it's basically the same thing that we have seen, a const, and it should have a state, and second one is a action or action that we're gonna dispatch. And in here I'm gonna use this user reducer. Inside this we're gonna provide a reducer function that we're gonna define outside of our advanced counter, and second one is initial argument that you're gonna pass. So right now the initial argument you can give, it is count 1 is to 0. right? So just provide the init. Now we haven't defined this reducer, right? So let's see what this reducer means, right? We have seen our reducer in our Redux. The same thing we're gonna provide in here. So what we need a reducer. It's a function. First argument is a state. Okay. Now in here we have seen our in our Redux that we have to provide a default value, but actually we have sent this init. You're right, init state inside it. And the second one is action, right? The action that we're gonna provide. Actually, we haven't seen what this action is. So let's see after this. Now in here, the same thing that we have done. Now in here, you can use action, the same code that you have right in your Redux code, right? Action.type. Now it's checking for cases like increment one. If it is, we're gonna dispatch. Then what it's gonna do? It's gonna increase by one, right? So we're gonna write this return statement and state and count one is two state dot count one plus one. Now there is one default value, right? Now what happens at default value, we can give return state because we have a default value this in it. Now in here, what we have to do once again, that we have to provide another case, that is sorry, decrement one. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna return the state with count one state dot count one minus one. Now I have let's see that there is some error in here. Actually, this function name syntax is wrong. Now it's correct. As you can see here that it is correct now. Now what we have to do, this one is done. We haven't provided it for this reset, right? So let's do for that also. So reset. If we dispatch one action that is reset, what it's gonna do, it's gonna return the state, and we're gonna spread the init, this one, this init const, such that count one is colon to 0. Now what we have to do in here, that I have said that it's gonna provide the state, right? And the second one is that this dispatch function, right? We can provide any name that you want, but by convention I'm just gonna provide this state and dispatch. Now what we can do in here, we can, this is dollar sign and state count one. So as you can see here that we got this 0. Now what we can do, we can provide the dispatch action in here, that is on click, and this is a function. So if I just write in like this, that we're gonna dispatch one function. Now in here, as you can see that action dot type, so we have to provide one key, right? So inside this key we have to provide this increment one. You can do the same thing, like just not provide this type in this you can have to provide, because such that you have to just define, just change the logic such that it will be matched with this switch statement in here. Now in here, this increment one is completed. Now in our here, what we can do, we're gonna provide another dispatch function. So inside this dispatch function, we're gonna provide this type, that is decrement one. Now again, other, we're gonna provide this on click. Again, we're gonna dispatch one function, that is type is reset. Now this is complete. Let's see in action that it is correct or not. So as you can see here, that is, it is correct. Now if you just go to your React Dev Tools and just go in here, as you can see here that we got this reducer, we have this count one, and if you just increase in here, the value is also increasing, and if you just reset, it is also reset. So actually this is the overflow of using useReducer in here. But in the coming videos you're gonna see the more advantages of useReducer. So you can create many dispatch functions or action type, or you can also just provide the payload from here also. You can provide some payload that you want to use in your there, like if you just provide the payload to 5. Okay, if you just provide the payload to 5, what we can do next is just provide this count 1 to action.payload. So we just have created one new key, and that we're gonna get, that we're gonna pass to this reset case and just give into here. Now what we can do in here, if we just reset, it will be reset to this value. Okay, so it will be reset to this value, and it will start from there, right? So this is the main thing. I'm gonna attach the use reducer documentation in the given file, even given video. So just stay tuned for the next hook. That's all. Thanks. Hi guys. So in this video we're gonna learn one new hook, and before learning our new hook I'm gonna remove some of the code in here, and I'm gonna convert our fetching method to async await. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just remove this set timeout that we have used in here. So for that I'm gonna just remove it here, from here, and that's all what we need in for this. Yeah, all what we need. Now it's doing good. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, that we're gonna use async, right? So for that purpose we're gonna use this async await. Now let's see, I'm gonna just type in here, and as you can see here that we got some error in here. And if I just hover in our async, as you can see here, effects callback are synchronous to prevent rest condition. Put the async function inside. So what it says, that use effect is actually a synchronous, is actually synchronous. So what we are going to use, we are going to use async await inside our use effect, or we're gonna convert, or we're gonna create a new function async, and we're gonna call inside it and also define it inside this use effect. So let's do that. So I'm just gonna remove it, and the name of our function name is fetch data. Okay, simple name. Now in here I'm just gonna use this ESX syntax, and the name of our function is fetch data, and we are going to use async, right? So let's do this async, and now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna paste in here inside our definition. Now let's see what we are going to do next. We are going to use this const response that we get using await. Now in here we don't need these parts. What we need is const data and await and response adjacent, and we also need this part. We just need these parts. So yeah, that's it. That's what we need in here. Now if I just refresh it again, and you will see in here that we got this. Okay, that is fine, right? Now there is one more thing that I'm gonna say, that is that if we're gonna write all the code inside this use effect, it will be much of code in here, right? Like this is not these things. Like if we want to dispatch an action, we're gonna use Redux, we're gonna use some different libraries. So it's gonna get a bigger code inside this use effect. And if I just remove this code and just type in outside of our use effect, let's see what will happen. Okay, and we're gonna just see what next. Just I'm gonna show what will happen. So that's purpose I'm just gonna use it high in here. Now let's see. Okay, yeah, we got this one time high. If I just type in here, yeah, it's doing good, it's fine. But there is one caveat, that is this fetch data is actually a dependency, not this is unmount. We don't need this is unmount here actually. So we have to pass this fetch data as a dependency in here. So if I do that, as you can see here, that we got many times high. Actually, this is wrong. We don't need this type of caveat, this type of things. So for that purpose, the use callback hook is introduced, and we're gonna see how can we do this. So for that purpose, I'm just gonna give it here the actually syntax, how can we write this. So I'm just gonna give it the same thing in here, const fetch data, and then you're gonna give this use callback, and this use callback will, we are going to provide a function inside it, and the function logic that I'm gonna write is the same thing. I'm just gonna copy it from here and just paste in here. And also we can use async in here because this is a simple function, right? This is a simple function, you can write this. Now we have imported this use callback. Now what is this? There is also one, there is something wrong in here. As you can see here, that it also need another thing, that is dependencies, that we have used inside this our use effect, right? And this use effect, we are going to provide the dependency such that if there is anything changes in here, it will look into this dependency. If it is different from the future render and before render, such that this function will be run. Okay, so actually there is something also wrong, that the use callback is not defined, because yeah, this is not this is not been imported in here. So let's import it. Right, now this is good. Now let's see what will happen. Now if I just type in here, it doesn't work, right? It will not work because we haven't provided this unmount in here, right? But I'm just gonna say change our code a little bit, such that it will look good. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change our mount to is mount, and this is going to be set mount, such that you will see that when this mount and unmounting will happen in here. Okay, and I'm gonna do one thing more, that is whenever the id will change, this id will change, it will not be static, it will be dynamic. That whenever this id will change, this fetch data will be occurred. Now for doing this, we again need one new state, that is id, and we are going to set the id, right? So we are going to use this use state, and the default value is 1, or initial value is 1. Now we don't need this. What we need is a string interpolation because this is going to be a dynamic string, right? Now in here, I'm just going to provide this ID in here. Now this is what we need in here. Now in here, the dependency is ID. Whenever the ID will change, this function will be called. And also what I'm gonna use, set mount to be true, because we have mounted, right? So this will be called. And again, if we are not mounted, so it will be a false. And also we are going to change text in here, right? Because this is not the right, this is actually static, that's why. So what I'm gonna use, we're gonna just use this text, and what is mount. Okay, is mount. Then what I'm gonna say, we are mount and or else unmount. Actually it should be camel case, so I'm just gonna give camel case. Now this is correct. Now I'm just gonna remove this on click. We don't need this on click, we are not going to do it with anything. Now we are just going to change it with text. Now just give it here text, and also it will be disabled whenever you unmount it. So dot not is mount. Now yeah, that's it what we need in here. Now also we are going to change this ID, right? So for that I'm just going to use this input tag, and input tag will have a type called number, and the value is equal to this ID. And we are going to use this on change. We'll have an event listener such that we are going to change this set ID to event dot target dot value. Now let's see that if I'm correct or not. Okay, so oh yeah, we haven't closed it, right? Yeah, now let's see. Okay, it's working fine, there's no error in here. Now if I just use it here, as you can see here, it's working fine. Okay, as you can see here, you can see that the same thing is happening in here. So yeah, so this is the use callback that is very beneficial when you want to optimize your code. Now in the next video we're gonna see one more optimized hook. Basically the name is useMemo, and we're gonna see the useMemo also with that how previously we use memo for optimizing our code. Yeah, so in this video that's all. Thanks. Hi guys, in this video we're gonna see a new hook that is useMemo. And in previous video we have learned this use callback function or use callback hook, and using with this use callback attached with use effect. Now in here, why should we learn use memo? Or before that, there is memo given by the React also, and we're gonna see the same thing. Okay, first of all, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just in our counter.js file, in here this code is very much similar to this code, right? Just simple changes is this one. Okay, and we're gonna just create a common component for this two div that we have created in here. And let's say the name of this is const compute, because we're gonna see that okay, let's just go with this. The name of this component is compute. Okay, now in here what we need count, and we need set count. Okay, this is what we need. And inside this, I'm just gonna also give it children, because this one, this part is common to both, right? Now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna grab this one and just cut it and return it here. Okay, yeah. Now just using return function, going to use it here. Now we need this children part, right? So for this, I'm just gonna remove this part and just give color children. Okay. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just give it here the compute that we have written, and inside this one we are sending the children, that is increase by one. Okay, now it's nothing to worry about right now. We're gonna see what we can do next. Now in here we're gonna just provide the count in here. The count is count one in here. Okay, the count is count. Okay, so the count and set count is set count. This is what we need in here. Oh, I'm just giving this it in the wrong way. Yeah, now I'm just gonna give it in here. Now I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna grab copy it and just paste in here, and just changing the increase by 2, and also the changing is to be made in here. It, that's what we need. We got everything. Okay, just give it here like this. Yeah, now it's done. As you can see here, we got a common component compute, and we can just use it like this. Now let's see what is the problem in here. Okay, so just console log again high. Now as you can see here, we got 2 times render high, this compute. Now if we just click on this, click me, as you can see here that we got render again 2 times. We are getting compute for this part also and this part also. So this is the caveat in here. We are not changing anything in this compute component, in this component, but it is also rendering, right? So to stop that, this React has given a memo. Memo is basically memoized, like store the values. Okay, stored anything, and if there is some changes in the input, the output will be changed also. This is the basically the memoized functionality. Okay, now how can we do that using React memo? Not using hook, only React memo. Now the syntax is very simple. Just use React dot memo. Okay, you can also just grab it here from memo in here, or I'm just going to use it like this, React dot memo, and just wrap this up like this. Simple. That's it. This is what this React memo does. Like as you can see here that there is nothing rendering, there is no rendering for this part, right? As you can see here, there is only one rendering, because there is some value changes in here. There is set new function is being called. That's why this part is rendering, and only one times. Now I'm gonna, this is the first part we have seen right now using React memo. But how can we do the same thing using hook, use memo? So I'm just gonna remove it, or yeah, just remove it. So this is the hooks that we are learning, right? So what we're gonna do next is in const. In the const, we're gonna provide the memo hook. Just the name convention, okay? Memo hook, no name convention, just giving the name, okay? So the memo hook one, use memo, okay? In here, this is a function. Inside this function, we are going to just copy it. Just copy this part and return it here, okay? It's not, this not looks good. So what I'm gonna do, uh, I'm just gonna create, just keep it here, okay? Yeah, just keep it here and give the dependencies in here that is depend on. Depending one is count and set count. Just remove this part because we don't need this. We need memo hook one, just like this. We're gonna just use this memo hook one like this. Now we need also const memo hook 2 because there is another one, that's why. Memo hook 2, use memo, and again the same thing. I'm just gonna grab it and paste in here and give the dependencies in here, that is count 2 and set count 2. Yeah, so in here there's the same thing, memo hook 2. So the name is incorrect, right? So just give the name correct, memo hook 2. Yeah, now let's see in action. Okay, as you can see here, if I just click on here only one time and again one time, so yeah, this is how we can use memo. But if you can just use the optimizing part without using use memo, this is also fine, that is also fine. You don't have to use memo like this, okay? You can also use the same thing, react memo, if it is simpler than this use memo. There's no problem with that. And yeah, so this is it. So we have learned to optimize a hook, that is use callback and use memo. And in the next video we're gonna see the new one, new hooks. So let's see. Hi guys, in previous video we have learned hooks. So in here we're gonna start learning some new concepts called ref, and context, or higher order components. Now in here, what is ref? So basically ref is a way, or it provides a way to access a DOM or a React component that is being rendered inside any component, right? So we're gonna see what is ref. Now why we need ref, basically, right? So in normal flow, what happens that you can pass a props to your child component and can re-render your child component, right? Now what happens that maybe at some cases you don't have to pass a prop, right? You don't have to pass a prop, there's no way you can pass a prop. So this ref comes into picture such that it can access a DOM node, such as this div. This is a DOM node. Or maybe it can access a React component such as app component and change its functionality as you want to. Now let's begin with that. We're gonna first look into a class component, and we're gonna move to this class component to this functional component and see how can we achieve the same thing but using some other tools. Now let's see. First we are going to use a class component. So I'm going to convert this class component or class app and going to use extends keyword and using this react.component so that we can use like lifecycle methods, state, props, right? Now in here I'm going to use this constructor and also using this super keyword such that we have anything that there has been in a react components class. Now in here what we are going to do, we are going to create one this keyword using this keyword, and we're going to create an instance or a property for this app. Let's say its name is focus input. Okay, now in here why we have created this, right? So basically this create ref, oh sorry, this ref that we are gonna see have this create ref tool so that we can create a ref and assign its value to this instance of this app component. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use this render keyword, render method, and render method inside it I'm going to use this return. And first of all, what I'm gonna do, I'm just going to use this div and also going to use this div, like closing it. Now I'm going to use a input component that I haven't created, so let's create with that. So I have created these components. Now in here I'm going to create a new file and its name is input.js. Now I'm just going to close it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use import react from react and also going to use class input extends react dot component, and in here I'm going to use a constructor again and going to use this props. As I have said that this ref can access the DOM and a React component, so I'm going to first see for this DOM node. That's why. So in here what I'm going to use, I'm going to use again this super keyword such that we can use this keyword in here. Now I'm going to use this dot input ref, and again I'm going to use this react dot create ref. So basically in for like initial state its actual value is null. Okay, and when it unmounted or yeah unmounted, then again its value going to change to null. Now in here I'm going to render. So in a normal flow what you will see that if I create one div and again I'm going to use an input tag and just closing it like this and just going to use a button and just say it is a click me and just closing it. And also you have to export this file, right? So just exporting this file, export default input, and we are going to use it. Oh sorry, I haven't used this return, right? So let's use it and just copying and pasting it here Yeah, it looks good. Now what I'm going to use, we have imported it, right? So let's see that we can import it here. Yeah, we have imported it, and in here you will see that we got this. Hmm, is there some error in here? Yeah, we got this input. Now what happens that if you just refresh it again, you will see that the focus is not here, and if you just type in something, you will not get into the here, like anything that you want to type, you will not get in here. So first of all, what you have to do is first click on it here, and then you can type it, right? So this is a rare, like this is the case in where you can use this ref, right? So what we can do in here, one thing you can do, or there are many ways to do it, of course. So if you use this handle click, okay, if you use this handle click, what you can do, okay, you cannot use this handle click, you have to use this dot handle click because you are using this class. Now in here you can use this handle click function, and what you can do next is input ref, but where you want to use this ref, right? So you have a props in here that's called ref, and inside this ref you can pass this dot input ref. Now what you can do in here, how can you access this node, right? How can you access this input tag? So what you can do, you can just type in current, and now you can use any DOM element properties that this input tag has. Okay, now if you just click on this click me, you will see that we got this a focus, right? Now this is a one way. Okay, so this is the way that you can use to focus on an input element. There are many things that you can do in here also, like you can use this select keyword. So what happens when you use this select keyword, what happens, the focus will not work. But if you use this and you again just use click me, you will get all the values that has been inserted in here as a select, and just you can copy and paste it very easily. Now what I'm going to see next, that you have uses handle change, right, on change method, right, for this input tag. You can also use it using this ref. So how can we use it? So what we can do, that just type in here value, okay, and you can just console it, okay, just console it here and you will see the value in here. Okay, so for this I'm just going to open this console in here first of all. Okay, so now let's type in hi, hello. Now just click on click me, you will see that we got this hi hello value. We haven't used anything, we haven't used on change method, we haven't created any state, just we have used this ref keyword, ref concept in here, and you got this value. So looking into it, you can learn that you can use this ref as a way to access a DOM node. Okay, you have just clearly seen that you can use this ref for accessing a DOM node using this current and any value, or sorry, any DOM attributes that this input tag or any tag has, you can use it. So yeah, so first thing that we have learned in here, how can we use this ref for a DOM node. In the next lesson we're gonna see how can we use this ref for a component such as this input tag, sorry, such as this input component. So yeah, let's say in the next video. Hi guys, so in previous video we have seen how can we use ref for class components, and when we how can we access a DOM node such as div input and many others, and also how can we use ref for a component React component that we have created like input. So in here in this video we're gonna see how can we use ref for the functional component purposes. So let's begin with that. So for that I have created this input wrapper class, or sorry, input wrapper component. And in here, as you can see in here, just I have reused this input.js file, input file. So let's in here what we're gonna do, we're gonna do the same thing, but we have created this as a functional component, and we're gonna see how can we achieve the same thing that app.js achieve. So first of all, I'm going to use const creating a input ref, and I'm going to use react dot, and the hooks that we can use for this is use ref, the same thing as a create ref, and you have to provide in here as a null initialize value. And next what we can do, just pass in here the ref one, ref as a props, and just pass in input ref. And you can do the same thing for the DOM also, but let's see for this first. So in here, as you can see that we have passed this input ref in here, and what I'm going to use, I'm going to use sorry, we can use React.useEffect. So what I want to do is I want to focus on the second input also. So how can we achieve that? For achieving it, what is the input in here, what we can use, we can use this handle click, right? We can use this handle click, or just purpose like what we got in here. We can just first of all we can console in here and see what we get inside this input ref dot current. Yeah, so let's see. So what we get again the same thing that we get from a class component create ref, and I'm going to use this handle click, or maybe it will not work in here, but let's see it is working or not. So yeah, as you can see here, we got this handle click again, or in the second one we got the focus in here. So at the time we only got focus at one time, at one point of time, right? So by doing this, as you can see in here, that as the app progress, like app.js render this render, and it will goes to this input wrapper. So in here this react.useEffect such as a component mount will run first. That's why the focus will not come in the first input, but come in the second input. So we got the focus in here. Now one thing to remember, that the parent component, if it's a function, then you can pass the ref in a DOM node such as input one, okay, or a class component such as input one. You cannot pass this ref into a functional component as a child. If it is a child component, yes, it is a child component input, but if it is a functional component, you cannot just pass ref inside it. So for demonstrating this part of thing, what I'm going to use, I'm going to create a input 2. Okay, I'm going to create an input 2 component, but the structure of this input 2 will be different. It will be a functional component first of all. So let's see input2.js, And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy all the content of this file inside this input2.js. Just that I'm just going to convert this into a functional component and removing these parts that we don't need it. And again, we don't need these parts because we are going to use a functional component. So again, we're going to use a const input ref, not this use ref, because it's a hook. And in here, we don't need this. What we need in here, we need const. And again, I have to remove all the this keyword that is present in this file. So let's begin with that and removing this render method that we don't need in here, and just this, right, and removing this again, this keyword that we don't need in here. Yeah, okay. So there is one this cons handle click. Okay, we don't need this because we haven't used it in here. Now go to your input wrapper and inside this input wrapper you have to import this input too, right? So just importing this file in here. Okay, we got this. Okay, okay, giving some space inside this input2.js. So just giving an styling, inline styling inside it, like position relative and top. From the top, I'm going to give 20 pixel maybe. Right. Now go to your input. Yeah. So in here, as you can see in here, we got this input to file and we got this handle click too. Okay, so as I have said that this can work inside it for a DOM. So let's see in here, if I just type in here and just use this click me, we got the value. Just by using useRef, we have used useRef and access the value in the input DOM. Now, as I have said, we haven't used for a functional component as I haven't passed it in here. So I'm just going to pass in here this ref. Okay. Okay. We got this ref and I'm just going to pass this input ref. Okay. And I'm just going to remove this ref. We don't need this right now. Okay. So just removing this. Yeah. So let's see what the warning we may get or a error we may get. So the handle cannot read property of handle. Okay, so we have to remove this part also, right, for now. Okay, let's see now what we get. So functional component cannot give ref. Attempt to access this ref will fail. And did you mean react.forward ref? Okay. Okay. So we have to use in this child component a means called forward ref, right? So the same thing that we have used, like forward ref, we are going to wrap this function inside it, and we get inside this forward ref two argument. The first one is props. If anything, you are going to pass from this input wrapper in here, and second one is ref. That's the part that you have passed in here using this input ref. Okay, so in here, as you can see here, this ref is like outside of these props. Okay, now in here we don't need these things because eventually this ref will be given to a passed to a DOM element, right? So the same thing we have to do. We're just going to pass in here the ref in here. That's what we need in here, and that's what we need in here. And again, we don't need these parts, and that's it. That's what we need in here. But what's the point of this all, right? So just console it here. Let's see what we may get. So console log input ref dot current. Okay, so we got this, eventually we got this input tag, right? And it is right, because as we have passed this ref inside this input, so basically what we need, that we can just access any of the DOM properties that this input tag has, so such as this focus. And if you do this, you will get a focus in here. Okay, so this is the lesson that we get from here, from this lesson, that we have created a parent component called input wrapper. Inside this we have created this input, which is a class component, and we have passed input ref, and we have used the methods inside this input component. But if we have used input 2, which is a functional component, and have passed this input ref as a ref for this input 2, you cannot get, or you cannot pass this ref inside this input 2 functional component. So for doing this, what we need another thing, that is forward ref, such that it forward the ref which is inside the inside the parent component and passing to a child component. And in here you have these two parameters, that is props and ref. And props is different in here, props is different from the ref. And just passing the ref in here input tag, you can access the input DOM using the current properties and do anything with it that input does. So yeah, so we have learned or understand this ref concept in here. And stay tuned for the next video. In the next video we are going to learn context. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.